Yeah, man, I think about this a lot because I actually don't even think I'd enjoy doing the agency without a co-founder, or well, at least not without Connor. Like I think, like you're saying there, like there's like a natural, there's a point of actual luck as well there in terms of finding someone where like your skill sets align and
Yeah.
you're kind of a good match for another in that respect. But obviously, we have examples of people we know who are very good solo founders in that. But I mean, yeah, I mean, for you, like going up the way along, I definitely found it kind of help with confidence as well. Like, you have a co-founder, you have someone to bounce ideas off, and because the split's so natural. But yeah, I mean, like for you, even like because you went on to start for you actually started with more business partners. So like you're it's definitely like very very pro co-founder in that way, as I would be. But like, what would do you think there are any kind of when you see, let's say, solo agency founders, do you think there are
Yeah.
any differences in the business where they maybe have to hand things off a bit earlier and it can have maybe some adverse effects in a sense?
Um, I think it depends on the individual you are. I think there are some really good solo founders. I think as a solo founder, you have to get one or two core individuals around you and that would have to come from an employee perspective, I'd assume, if it's not going to come from a business partner perspective or an external consultant. But I think if you're starting a service-based business from scratch and trying to grow it aggressively and quickly, the idea that you can do everything well I think is not, it's just false. You need to bring it rely. I think if you're a solo founder, it relies on getting a couple of C-suite or seriously high level talented individuals into the business early to allow you to specialize in where you are best. If I think through our mutual connections, they've mostly done that. They've got like one or two like right hand, whether it's a COO or CMO, XYZ role. Most of them have that, and I know a lot more agency owners who are co-founders than solo founders, I think.
I mean, I'm thinking even like on a brand, like there, because it's so easy to see the distinction within an agency, but when you think of with a
Yeah,
brand, you're like, how would you divide that? I feel like every partnership there would be completely different. Like I don't think
yeah,
one
yeah,
person is necessarily just making sure creatives are really dialed, make sure like media buying is really on point, like just that creatively and performance marketing wise that they're really good, and then the other is doing all the operations, because there's so many different parts to all
yeah,
the operations of a brand. I don't think you'd necessarily just be the COO by yourself. I think there'd be like a COO and then a kind of a sub COO nearly, in a sense.
yeah. And there's different levels of operations. You've got like marketing operations, you've got actual operations, products, logistics, etc. It's a lot more like. So I guess agencies are a little bit simpler in that sense. Simpler in one way and more complex in others. But yeah, I think it's a little bit more difficult to split them off. For JAQ, like me and Connor split it, I just handle all of the marketing and just make sure he deals with all the other problems, which keeps things simple for us. But yeah, I think it will differ. Like even if I think through our clients who are co-founders, some of them, with some of the businesses like a setup where both founders are involved in every decision. Others might have lanes that they operate in. I think it's very different, like you say, very very unique to each business.
100%, yeah. But I think definitely, yeah, like we're saying, agency a bit easier to kind of define. So with you then kind of in Soar, like as you've grown, so like both of us would have started very much sort of like bedroom style agency, right? Like in the beginning, like you're like, it's almost in a sense kind of like take what you can get client wise, and like the very early on stages and that kind of thing. But how did you like, right? So I was thinking about this a lot last year. So I was thinking about this concept of like high impact, low likelihood objectives. I don't know if I was talking to you about this before, but it's basically where you move on from having a task list to kind of moving on to more so working on projects and objectives.
Yeah,
And like it's almost this mentality shift that I had that I really fucked up actually, like around the middle of last year, where I didn't realize that my role had sort of changed. So like I used to kind of identify with myself as like how much work I could get done on any given day, and it was like, how much of a workhorse can I be? Like I can just power this all on myself. Like I can produce this much
yeah,
content. I can I can take this many calls, all the rest of it. And then you kind of start to realize after a while, it's about kind of getting a bit more smart with what you're doing, with taking on the right kind of clients, with hiring the right kind of people. And it's not necessarily about your output on a given day. It's more about your judgment. And then we grow into a point where, I was very much out of delivery. So then I was like, oh, fuck, like, what am I doing here? Like, this is, it felt a bit unusual to me because my role had completely changed. And it took me far too long to catch on that was actually how it was meant to be. And it was like, instead you're kind of moving on to something like sales, which is high impact, but low likelihood of succeeding. Hiring, high impact, but low likelihood of finding the exact right person in that time. You're going to have to do many interviews and go around through a long process. Mm-hmm. And so it's a far less dopamine sustaining way of living your life. So then you're kind of like, oh, fuck, what am I doing here? Because you're just working on things that have a very low likelihood of succeeding. So you don't get that sense of completion from completing a task list. So that was something I've been thinking a lot about actually the last few months, of like not catching on to that quick enough. But for how quick you grew, in a sense, I feel like, I mean, you're quite a workhorse, of course, but it's like, I feel like you maybe caught on to that a bit, like, maybe not, but I mean, like, I guess it's more like how like roles can change nearly as it kind of grows with an agency.
Yeah, I think there's two different things there. I think there's like growth rate and scaling a business, and like I think there's like there needs to be a real realization that like not every task is built equal. Not every lever is the same size, and like a lot of growing a business, but growing an agency and growing an e-com brand specifically, like, is about focusing on pulling the right levers and focusing resource around the right areas at the right time, and doing that consistently is a lot of the time is like what separates like good from great, I think. Like I always peddle the idea of like do less better, like focus on growth as a process in every business. So it's like, and the solution to growing faster is not like complex, making that process more complex. A lot of the time it's doubling down on where you're getting momentum. So like in an e-commerce brand, if you're starting to get momentum through like a Facebook ads or a Meta ads, just because that started to work doesn't mean you should go and do another 3 marketing routes. You should just double down on what's working until it becomes challenging to do so. So I think that's one part of that process. The second part is like, as you grow a business, realizing, like how your role within that organization changes. Like it does move to more project work. Once you get to a certain size, it moves more towards like coaching people to be better. Like ultimately, the higher up an organization you get, like the less decisions you probably make on a monthly basis, but the higher the impact of those decisions, I'd say. And a lot of them will be like, oh, do we allocate resource to XYZ marketing tactic department? Do we do this initiative or do we not? Whereas like when you're very like executional, it can be something as like way more trivial, I think, on a daily basis. I think like appreciating that and being like cognizant that that's going to happen as you go and you grow as a company is important. And like you say, not just chasing busyness at the expense of impact.